The lunch rush at Lucille Blue was in full chaos. Elizabeth Hayes balanced 3 plates on her left arm while gripping a coffee pot with her right hand, weaving through the maze of tables with practiced grace. Her blonde ponytail swung behind her as she delivered orders with a smile that never seemed to fade, no matter how demanding the customers became. "Table 12 needs more bread," Ruby called out from behind the bar, her dark eyes sympathetic as she watched Elizabeth juggle yet another impossible task. "On it," Elizabeth replied cheerfully, somehow finding room on her mental checklist between refilling water glasses and taking new orders. Alice. Lucille Blue catered to Manhattan's elite. The lunch crowd consisted of investment bankers, lawyers, and business executives who spent more on a single meal than Elizabeth earned in a week. She never resented them for it. That wasn't her nature. Instead, she saw each customer as a person with their own story, their own struggles, even if those struggles looked different from hers. She had been working double shifts for 3 months now, ever since her grandmother Gloria had fallen ill. The medical bills were mounting faster than Elizabeth could count, but she refused to give up. Gloria had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. Now it was her turn to take care of the woman who had sacrificed everything for her, Elizabeth. Table 5, Mr. Pemberton, the manager, gestured urgently toward a corner booth where a man in an expensive charcoal suit had just sat down. Elizabeth grabbed a menu and headed over, her smile firmly in place despite her exhausted feet. The man was staring at his phone, his jaw set in a hard line that suggested he was used to being obeyed without question. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his watch probably cost more than her car. Everything about him screamed power and control. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Lucille Blue. Can I start you with something to drink?" Elizabeth asked, her voice warm and genuine. The man looked up. For a moment, something flickered in his steel-gray eyes. Surprise? Maybe. People like him probably weren't used to being greeted with actual kindness rather than nervous fawning. "Coffee, black, and I need to order quickly." "I have a meeting in 40 minutes, he said, his tone clipped and businesslike. "Of course. Our chef's special today is pan-seared salmon with lemon butter sauce, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's also one of our fastest dishes to prepare," Elizabeth suggested helpfully, already calculating the kitchen timing in her head. "Fine, that and a side." Salady handed back the menu without really looking at her and returned to his phone. Elizabeth headed to the kitchen with his order, then grabbed the coffee pot to fill his cup. This was where things went wrong. As she approached table 5, a businessman at table 6 suddenly pushed back his chair without looking. Elizabeth tried to dodge, stumbled slightly, and the coffee pot tilted. Time seemed to slow down. She watched in horror as hot coffee arced through the air and splashed directly onto the lap of the man in the charcoal suit. He jumped up with a sharp intake of breath, and Elizabeth's heart stopped. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry." "I am so sorry," she gasped, immediately grabbing napkins and reaching toward him before realizing that probably wasn't appropriate. "Sir, I didn't see the chair. This is completely my fault. Please let me help." She expected rage. She expected him to demand to see the manager, to threaten her job, to make a scene. Wealthy men like him usually did when things didn't go their way. Instead, Jonathan Sterling looked down at his ruined designer pants, then up at the young waitress, whose blue eyes were wide with genuine distress and concern. It's not for her job, but for having hurt him. And something utterly unexpected happened. He felt his anger dissolve. "It's fine," he said quietly, taking the napkins from her trembling hands. "Accidents happen. Your suit is ruined, and that's a really expensive suit. And, oh no, did the coffee burn you? Are you hurt?" Elizabeth's words tumbled out in a rush of worry. Jonathan found himself oddly touched by her concern. When was the last time someone had worried about him as a person rather than as a business asset? "I'm not hurt. The suit will survive," he assured her, though in truth, the suit was probably beyond saving. Mr. Pemberton rushed over, his face pale with panic. "Mr. Sterling, I am profoundly sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Elizabeth, my office now." Jonathan's eyebrows rose slightly. So Pemberton knew who he was. Most people in New York's business circles did. Jonathan Sterling, 34 years old, CEO of Sterling Enterprises, one of the youngest billionaires in America, known for his ruthless business tactics and complete lack of patience for incompetence. "That won't be necessary," Jonathan said firmly, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "It was an accident. No harm done. But Mr. Sterling, your suit, the inconvenience," Pemberton sputtered. "I said it's fine." Jonathan's tone made it clear the discussion was over. He turned to Elizabeth, who was still looking mortified. "What's your name?" "Elizabeth Hayes, sir," she answered softly. "Well, Elizabeth Hayes, I believe you were getting me coffee before this incident. I'd still like that coffee if you don't mind." "And the salmon." Her face brightened with relief and gratitude. "Yes, of course. Right away. And again, I'm truly sorry." As she hurried away, Jonathan sat back down in his now damp pants and found himself smiling slightly. There was something refreshing about her genuine remorse and concern. In his world, people were either intimidated by him or trying to use him. Elizabeth Hayes had simply been worried about whether she had hurt him. Over the next 20 minutes, Elizabeth provided the most attentive service Jonathan had ever received. Not because she was trying to make up for the coffee incident, but because that was simply who she was. She refilled his water without being asked, brought extra lemon for his fish, and checked on him with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. When he paid his bill, he left a tip that made Elizabeth's eyes go wide with shock. $500. "Sir, this is too much," she protested. Chasing after him as he headed for the door, Jonathan paused, turning to look at her. Up close, she was even prettier than he had first noticed. But it wasn't her looks that intrigued him. It was the light in her eyes, the kindness that seemed to radiate from her. In a city full of people trying to climb over each other to get ahead, she was an anomaly. "Consider it an apology for being short with you earlier," he said. "But you weren't that short." "And I spilled coffee on you," Elizabeth argued, still holding out the money. "Keep it." "I insist." Jonathan's lips quirked into what might have been a smile. "And Elizabeth, the salmon was excellent." "You were right about the recommendation." He left before she could protest further, but as he walked to his waiting car, Jonathan Sterling found himself thinking about a cheerful blonde waitress instead of his upcoming merger negotiation. It was a strange and unfamiliar feeling. Back inside the restaurant, Ruby rushed over to Elizabeth. "Do you have any idea who that was?" "A customer who I dumped coffee on," Elizabeth replied, still staring at the tip in disbelief. "That was Jonathan Sterling, as in Sterling Enterprises, as in billionaire, as in one of the most powerful men in New York." Ruby grabbed her arm. "And he left you a $500 tip and didn't get you fired. Girl, what kind of magic spell did you cast on him?" Elizabeth looked toward the door where he had exited, her heart doing a strange flutter. "I don't know what you're talking about. He was just being nice." But over the next 2 weeks, Jonathan Sterling came back to Lucille Blue 5 more times, and every single time, he requested Elizabeth's section. Elizabeth wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time, her eyes darting toward the entrance every few seconds. It was Thursday, which meant Jonathan Sterling would probably come in for lunch. He had developed a pattern over the past month. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always at 1 o'clock, always requesting her section. "You're doing that thing again?" Ruby teased, elbowing her gently. "The thing where you pretend you're not watching the door like a lovesick puppy." "I am not lovesick," Elizabeth protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm just providing good customer service, right? And I'm the Queen of England." Ruby grinned. "Admit it." "You like him?" Elizabeth opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The truth was, she did like Jonathan Sterling. Over the past month, their brief interactions had evolved beyond simple customer and server exchanges. He had started asking about her day, her life, her dreams. She had learned that he took his coffee black because his father had, that he hated tomatoes but would eat them to be polite, and that beneath his stern exterior was a man who seemed desperately lonely. But liking him and doing anything about it were 2 entirely different things. Men like Jonathan Sterling didn't date waitresses. They dated socialites and models and women who belonged in their world of penthouses and private jets. At precisely 1 o'clock, Jonathan walked through the door. But something was different today. His jaw was tighter than usual, his movements more tense. Elizabeth grabbed a menu and headed over. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling, the usual spot?" she asked brightly. "Actually, Elizabeth, I need to speak with you. Privately." His gray eyes were serious, almost urgent. Her stomach dropped. This was it. He was going to complain about something, or worse. He was going to stop coming altogether. "Of course, I can take my break now. There's a small courtyard out back." 5 minutes later, they stood in the tiny courtyard behind the restaurant, surrounded by potted plants and the distant hum of city traffic. Elizabeth clasped her hands together nervously. "Waiting, I'm going to ask you something. And I need you to hear me out completely before you respond," Jonathan began, running a hand through his dark hair in an uncharacteristic gesture of uncertainty. "What I'm about to propose will sound insane, but I'm desperate." Elizabeth's heart hammered against her ribs. "Okay. My mother has been trying to set me up with my ex, fiancée Vivian, for the past 6 months. Vivian and I were engaged 2 years ago, but she only wanted my money and social status. When I called off the wedding, she was furious. Now she's convinced my mother that we're meant to be together, and between the two of them, my life has become unbearable." Jonathan paused, studying Elizabeth's face. "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend. For 6 months, long enough to convince everyone that I've moved on, and that Vivian needs to do the same." Elizabeth stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "Yes. I'll pay you $50,000 for 6 months of your time. We'll need to attend some social events together, have dinner occasionally where we might be seen, and you'll need to meet my mother. But nothing inappropriate. Separate bedrooms if we ever need to travel. This would be purely a business arrangement." $50,000. The number echoed in Elizabeth's mind. That would cover all of her grandmother's medical bills and then some. Gloria could get the treatment she needed. The treatment Elizabeth had been desperately trying to afford, with double shifts and slowly draining her non-existent savings. "Why me?" she whispered. Jonathan's expression softened. "Because you're genuine. Because you're kind. Because in a city full of people who want something from me, you spilled coffee on me and were more worried about whether I was hurt than whether you'd lose your job." He stepped closer. "Because I trust you, Elizabeth. I know that sounds strange given we barely know each other, but it's true." Elizabeth's mind raced. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. People didn't actually do things like this in real life. I need to think about it, of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow. Jonathan pulled out his wallet and handed her a business card with a personal number written on the back. "Call me when you decide." That evening, Elizabeth sat by her grandmother's hospital bed, holding Gloria's frail hand. The older woman's breathing was labored, her skin pale against the white sheets. The doctors said she needed a specialized treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. Without it, she had maybe 6 months to live. "Grandma, I need your advice," Elizabeth said softly, even though Gloria was sleeping. "There's a man. He's offered me money to pretend to be his girlfriend. I know it sounds wrong, but the money would save you. And he's not a bad person. I think he's actually quite wonderful underneath all that seriousness." She wiped away a tear. "What do I do?" Gloria's eyes fluttered open. Despite her illness, her gaze was still sharp and knowing. "Baby girl, is this something you want to do? Not for the money, but because of him?" Elizabeth thought about Jonathan's rare smiles, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when she made him laugh. The careful way he always asked about her day, as if her answer truly mattered to him. "I think so. Is that terrible? The heart wants what it wants, sweetheart. Just protect yourself. Men with money and power can break hearts without even trying." Gloria squeezed her hand weakly. "But if he makes you happy, if he treats you well, then maybe this is fate giving you both what you need." The next morning, Elizabeth called the number on the card. Jonathan answered on the first ring. "I'll do it," she said before she could change her mind. "But I have conditions. You respect me at all times. You're honest with me, And if at any point this feels wrong, we can end it early. Agreed. She could hear the relief in his voice. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll have my assistant Thomas draft a contract. Can you meet me tonight? There's a charity gala tomorrow, and we'll need to make our first public appearance. That night, in Jonathan's penthouse apartment that overlooked Central Park, Elizabeth felt like she had stepped into another universe. The space was enormous, decorated in sleek modern furniture and expensive art. Thomas Reed, Jonathan's assistant and apparently his closest friend, was warm and welcoming, immediately putting her at ease. You'll need a dress for tomorrow, Jonathan said, leading her to a room where a personal stylist was waiting with racks of designer gowns. Choose anything you like. Elizabeth ran her fingers over the silky fabrics, overwhelmed. Jonathan, I can't accept all this. You're doing me an enormous favor. Please. His voice was gentle. Besides, you'll need to look the part. People will be watching us. She chose a midnight blue gown that made her feel like a princess. As the stylist worked on fitting it, Jonathan stood nearby, and Elizabeth caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You look beautiful, he said simply, when she emerged in the fitted gown. I feel like I'm playing dress-up, Elizabeth admitted, smoothing the fabric nervously. You're not. You belong in that dress just as much as anyone else who'll be at that gala tomorrow. Jonathan stepped closer, his eyes intense. Elizabeth, I want you to remember something. You're not less than anyone in my world. You're actually more than most of them. You have something they don't. A good heart. The charity gala was held at the Plaza Hotel. Elizabeth had never seen so much wealth and glamour concentrated in one place. Women dripped with diamonds, men wore tuxedos that cost more than her yearly salary, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. Jonathan kept his hand on the small of her back. Guiding her through the crowd with practiced ease, he introduced her simply as Elizabeth, my girlfriend, and she was surprised by how many people seemed genuinely happy for him. Then Vivian appeared. She was stunning in a red dress that hugged every curve, her dark hair swept up elegantly, her smile predatory. Jonathan, darling, I heard the most amusing rumor that you were seeing someone new. Her eyes raked over Elizabeth dismissively. How quaint, Vivian. Jonathan's voice was cool. Elizabeth, this is Vivian Sterling, my former fiancée. Vivian, this is Elizabeth Hayes, a waitress, I hear. Vivian's smile was sharp. How very pretty woman of you, Jonathan. Trying to save the poor girl from her dreary life. Elizabeth felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but before she could respond, Jonathan's arm tightened around her waist. Elizabeth is the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. Something you could never understand. His voice was hard as steel. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have people to see. As they walked away, Elizabeth was trembling. I'm sorry. I don't belong here. Stop. Jonathan turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. You belong wherever you choose to be. Don't let Vivian's cruelty make you doubt yourself. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Elizabeth was surprised to find that many people were genuinely kind to her. Jonathan's mother, Catherine Sterling, was particularly warm, though her sharp eyes seemed to see right through their arrangement. As the night ended, and Jonathan drove Elizabeth home to her small Brooklyn apartment, they sat in the car in comfortable silence. Thank you for tonight, Jonathan said finally. You were perfect. I almost ran away when Vivian showed up, Elizabeth admitted. But you didn't. That takes courage. He reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before pulling back. Get some rest. We have brunch with my mother on Sunday. She'll want to interrogate you properly. Over the next month, Elizabeth and Jonathan fell into an unexpected rhythm. They had dinner twice a week, attended social events together, and slowly, the line between pretend and real began to blur. Elizabeth found herself looking forward to their time together not because of the arrangement, but because Jonathan made her laugh. He challenged her opinions, asked about her dreams of opening her own restaurant someday, and listened like her words truly mattered. And Jonathan found himself thinking about Elizabeth constantly. The way she hummed while she worked, her infectious optimism, the feel of her hand in his at social events. Somewhere along the way, Pretending to care for her had become the easiest role he had ever played, because he wasn't pretending anymore. But neither of them was brave enough to say it out loud. 3 months into their arrangement, Elizabeth was helping her grandmother settle into the new treatment facility that Jonathan's money had made possible. Gloria looked better already, the color returning to her cheeks. Hope replacing the resignation that had filled her eyes. "He's a good man, your Jonathan," Gloria said. Watching Elizabeth fluff her pillows, "He's not my Jonathan, Grandma. This is just an arrangement, remember?" Elizabeth tried to keep her voice light, but her heart ached at the words. "Baby girl, I may be old, but I'm not blind. The way you talk about him, the way your whole face lights up when his name is mentioned. That's not acting." Gloria patted her hand. "The question is, does he feel the same way?" Elizabeth didn't have an answer. Jonathan was affectionate in public, holding her hand, keeping his arm around her waist. But in private, he maintained a careful distance. He had never tried to kiss her, never crossed the line they had drawn at the beginning. She told herself that was good, that it meant he was respecting their agreement. But late at night, she found herself wishing he would cross that line. Just once, that same evening, Jonathan sat in his office with Thomas, staring at a calendar marked with red X's counting down the remaining 3 months of their arrangement. "You're in love with her," Thomas said bluntly. "Just admit it. It's complicated," Jonathan replied, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "It's only complicated because you're making it complicated. You love her. She clearly has feelings for you. Just tell her the truth and tear up that ridiculous contract." "Oh." Thomas leaned forward. "Jonathan, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you this happy, this alive. Don't let her slip away because you're too proud or too scared to admit you need her. What if she only stays because of the money? What if when the 6 months are up, she's relieved to be free of me?" Jonathan's voice was raw with vulnerability. "Then you'll know. But at least you'll have tried. Right now, you're both trapped in this limbo, afraid to make the first move. Someone has to be brave." The next night was the Sterling Enterprises annual charity gala, the biggest social event of the year. Elizabeth wore a stunning emerald green gown that Jonathan had insisted on buying for her, and when she walked down the stairs of his penthouse, she took his breath away. "You're staring," she said softly, a blush coloring her cheeks. "You're beautiful," Jonathan replied, and his voice held a tenderness that made her heart skip. The gala was magnificent, held in the ballroom of the Sterling building. 500 guests mingled under crystal chandeliers. Champagne flowed freely, and a string quartet played softly in the background. Elizabeth had grown more comfortable at these events, but tonight felt different. Jonathan seemed tense, distracted, his hand gripping hers more tightly than usual. Catherine Sterling appeared beside them, elegant in a silver gown. Over the past months, Jonathan's mother had become genuinely fond of Elizabeth, often inviting her to lunch independently of Jonathan. "Dear, you look radiant," Catherine said warmly, kissing her cheek. Then she turned to her son. "Jonathan, I need to speak with you about the foundation donations." "Elizabeth, would you mind terribly if I borrowed him for just a moment?" "Of course not," Elizabeth smiled, squeezing Jonathan's hand reassuringly before releasing it. As Jonathan walked away with his mother, Elizabeth made her way to the bar for a glass of water. She was admiring the ice sculptures when a familiar voice made her freeze. "Still playing Cinderella, I see," Vivian said, appearing beside her in a blood-red gown that matched her lipstick. "Tell me, how much is he paying you to pretend to adore him?" Elizabeth's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please." "I've had a private investigator following Jonathan for months. I know all about your little arrangement. The contract, the $50,000, the fake relationship designed to keep me away." Vivian's smile was venomous. "Did you really think you could fool everyone?" "It's not like that," Elizabeth whispered, her mind racing with panic. "Isn't it? Poor little waitress gets paid to play dress-up with the billionaire. It's actually quite sad." Vivian pulled out her phone. "I wonder what everyone here would think if they knew the truth, especially the press. I'm sure they'd love the story." "Why are you doing this?" Elizabeth asked, her voice shaking. "Because Jonathan was mine first. Because he humiliated me when he called off our wedding. And because watching him fall for someone like you is pathetic." Vivian's eyes glittered with malice. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to break up with him tonight, publicly, and disappear from his life. If you don't, I'll expose your little arrangement to everyone in this room and destroy both of your reputations. Elizabeth felt tears burning behind her eyes. And if I do what you ask, then your secret stays safe. You get to keep your money, and Jonathan can come back where he belongs. With someone of his own class. Vivian checked her phone. You have 10 minutes to decide. Then I start making calls. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she set down her water glass. Her mind was spinning with panic and heartbreak. She had known this was temporary, had known it would end, but she hadn't expected it to hurt this much. The thought of walking away from Jonathan, of never seeing his rare smile again, of losing the man she had somehow fallen completely in love with, was agony. But if Vivian exposed them, Jonathan's reputation would be damaged. People would think he had paid her out of desperation, would mock him, would question every business decision he made. She couldn't do that to him. Not when he had saved her grandmother's life. Not when he had treated her with such kindness and respect, with tears streaming down her face. Elizabeth made her decision. She found Jonathan near the main stage, speaking with several board members. When he saw her tears, he immediately excused himself and rushed over. Elizabeth, what's wrong? His hands cupped her face gently, his thumb wiping away her tears. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, the words tearing her apart. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I thought I could, but I can't. This world, these people, it's too much. I don't belong here. What are you talking about? What happened? Jonathan looked around frantically. Did someone say something to you? No one had to say anything. I just realized the truth. Elizabeth forced herself to step back from his touch, even though every fiber of her being screamed to stay close to him. We're from different worlds. This was always going to end. I think it should end now, before anyone else gets hurt. Elizabeth, please.
Back to me.
Whatever this is, we can fix it. Jonathan's voice was desperate, and she could see the fear in his eyes. There's nothing to fix. This was a business arrangement, and I'm fulfilling my end by ending it. Consider the contract voided. Elizabeth pulled off the emerald bracelet he had given her for tonight, pressing it into his hand. Thank you for everything you've done for my grandmother. I'll return the money as soon as I'm able. I don't care about the money. I care about you. Jonathan grabbed her hand, holding tight. Elizabeth, I love you. The words she had dreamed of hearing shattered her heart into pieces. No, you don't. You're just used to having me around. But you'll forget about me soon enough. Before he could respond, before her resolve could crumble, Elizabeth pulled away and ran. She pushed through the crowd of curious onlookers, ignoring Jonathan calling her name, and fled into the night. She made it 2 blocks before the sobs overtook her. She collapsed on a bench in a small park, crying harder than she had since her parents died. She had done the right thing. She had protected Jonathan, so why did it feel like her heart was being ripped from her chest? Back at the gala, Jonathan stood frozen in shock. Thomas appeared at his side, gripping his shoulder. What happened? She left. She said she can't do this anymore, that we're from different worlds. Jonathan's voice was hollow. I told her I loved her, and she left anyway. That doesn't sound like Elizabeth, Thomas said slowly. Something's wrong. That girl is head over heels for you. She wouldn't just walk away like that unless someone made her. Realization dawned on Jonathan's face. Vivian. Where's Vivian? They found her near the bar, looking entirely too pleased with herself. Jonathan strode up to her, his expression thunderous. He demanded. I have no idea what you mean, Vivian said innocently, sipping her champagne. You said something to Elizabeth? You threatened her. What? Did you do? Each word was punctuated with barely contained rage. Vivian's mask of innocence slipped, revealing the spite beneath. I simply told her the truth. That she's a paid employee pretending to be your girlfriend. That she doesn't belong in our world. That if she had any decency, she'd disappear and let you be with someone appropriate. You had no right. Jonathan's voice was dangerously quiet. Elizabeth is worth 10 of you. 100 of you. She's kind and genuine and everything good that you could never understand. She's a waitress you paid to play pretend, Vivian spat. Everyone here will know it soon enough. Then let them know. Jonathan's words shocked everyone within earshot into silence. He turned away from Vivian and walked to the main stage, grabbing a microphone from the stunned MC. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention, please?" The room gradually quieted, all eyes turning to Jonathan on the stage. "There's something I need to say, something I should have said months ago." Thomas watched from the side, a slow smile spreading across his face. 3 months ago, I asked Elizabeth Hayes to pretend to be my girlfriend. I offered her money because I was trying to solve a problem in the most businesslike way I knew how. I needed to convince certain people that I had moved on with my life, and I thought a fake relationship was the logical solution. Jonathan paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. But somewhere between that first arranged date and tonight, something unexpected happened. I fell in love with her. Completely, irrevocably in love with her. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Catherine Sterling stood near the front, tears in her eyes and a knowing smile on her face. Elizabeth Hayes is the kindest, bravest, most genuine person I've ever met. She spilled coffee on me, worried that I was hurt before worrying about losing her job. She works double shifts to take care of her sick grandmother. She lights up every room she enters with her smile and her optimism. And she makes me want to be a better man. Jonathan's voice cracked slightly. Tonight, someone made her believe that she doesn't belong in my world, that our relationship was nothing more than a business transaction. But the truth is, I don't deserve her. Not because of money or social class, but because she's extraordinary. And I'm just a man who got lucky enough to have her in his life for a few months. He pulled out his phone, sending a quick message to Thomas, who nodded and slipped away. If you're watching this somehow, if anyone here knows where she is, please tell her this. I don't want a pretend relationship. I don't want 6 months. I want forever. I want morning coffee and terrible dance moves in the kitchen. I want her laugh and her kindness and her optimism. I want the chance to deserve her love. Jonathan looked directly at the camera a news crew was holding, knowing the footage would be everywhere by morning. Elizabeth Hayes, I love you. Not because of any arrangement, but in spite of it. Come back to me, please. The ballroom erupted in applause, but Jonathan barely heard it. He handed the microphone back and walked off the stage, ignoring everyone trying to stop him to offer congratulations or ask questions. He had to find Elizabeth. Thomas met him at the door. I've got the car ready. Ruby gave me Elizabeth's address when I called the restaurant. Let's go get your girl. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sat in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, still wearing her beautiful gown, mascara streaked down her face. She had turned off her phone, unable to bear the thought of Jonathan's calls or messages. She had done the right thing. She had protected him. So why did everything hurt so much? A knock on her door made her freeze. It was past midnight. Ruby had a key, so it wouldn't be her. With trembling hands, Elizabeth opened the door. Jonathan stood there, still in his tuxedo, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. You left before I could finish, he said without preamble. Jonathan, you shouldn't be here. Vivian will expose us and ruin everything, Elizabeth whispered. I don't care what Vivian does. I already told everyone myself. He pulled out his phone, showing her the video that was already trending on social media. Elizabeth watched with growing shock as Jonathan declared his love for her in front of 500 people and countless cameras. Why would you do that? She breathed. Your reputation, your business, everything. People will think you're desperate and foolish. Let them think what they want. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. Jonathan stepped closer, his hands reaching for her face again, and this time she didn't pull away. Elizabeth, I love you. Not the version of you that shows up to galas in designer gowns. I love the you that spills coffee and worries about strangers and works herself to exhaustion for her grandmother. I love your terrible jokes and the way you hum when you're nervous and how you see the good in everyone. Even people like Vivian, who don't deserve it. I love you too, Elizabeth sobbed, the words finally breaking free. I've loved you for months. But I was so scared that when the 6 months were up, you'd realize I was just the waitress you hired and move on. You were never just anything to me, Jonathan said fiercely. You're everything. You taught me how to live again, how to feel again. These past 3 months have been the happiest of my life. And that had nothing to do with any arrangement and everything to do with you. Vivian said, I don't belong in your world, Elizabeth whispered. Then we'll build our own world. One where the only thing that matters is that we love each other. Jonathan's thumb traced her cheekbone gently. I'm not asking you to fit into my life, Elizabeth. I'm asking you to let me fit into yours. I'll eat at your favorite diners and learn to dance properly and help you open that restaurant you dream about. I don't care about the rest as long as I have you. Are you sure? Elizabeth searched his face, looking for any hint of doubt. I come with a sick grandmother, student loans, and a studio apartment that's smaller than your closet. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything. Jonathan smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his face. Although I should mention that my mother already loves you and will probably insist on helping with the wedding planning. Wedding. Elizabeth's eyes widened. Eventually, when you're ready, no contracts, no arrangements, no time limits. Just you and me and whatever life brings us. Jonathan leaned his forehead against hers. So what do you say, Elizabeth Hayes? Will you give us a real chance? Instead of answering with words, Elizabeth stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and tasted like tears and hope and new beginnings. Jonathan wrapped his arms around her, lifting her slightly off the ground, pouring 3 months of restrained feelings into that single kiss when they finally broke apart. Both breathless and smiling, Jonathan noticed something. You're still wearing the dress. I couldn't bring myself to take it off. It felt like taking off the last piece of you I had left, Elizabeth admitted. You'll never have to take off any part of me again, Jonathan promised. I'm yours. Completely and permanently yours. No contract required. 6 months later, Elizabeth stood in a completely different venue, in a completely different dress. This one was white lace, simple but elegant, and she felt more beautiful than she had in any designer gown. Gloria sat in the front row, healthy and glowing, next to Catherine Sterling. The two women having become fast friends, Ruby stood beside Elizabeth as her maid of honor, crying happy tears. Thomas stood next to Jonathan, grinning like he had won the lottery himself, as Elizabeth walked down the aisle toward Jonathan, whose eyes shone with love and wonder. She thought about that rainy afternoon when she had spilled coffee on a serious stranger. She thought about the impossible proposal, the fake relationship that became real, the heartbreak that led to the greatest declaration of love she could have imagined. Hi, she whispered when she reached him. Hi, Jonathan whispered back, taking her hands. You're beautiful. You're always beautiful. The ceremony was simple and perfect. When the officiant asked if Jonathan took Elizabeth to be his wife, his I do was firm and sure, without a single doubt. When Elizabeth said her vows, promising to love him in sickness and health, in designer suits and casual jeans, everyone laughed through their tears, and when they were finally pronounced husband and wife, Jonathan kissed Elizabeth with such tenderness and passion that the entire room burst into applause. At the reception held at Lucille Blue, the restaurant where their story began, Jonathan stood to give a toast. A wise person once told me that the heart wants what it wants, he began, looking at Gloria, who smiled back knowingly. For years I thought my heart wanted success, money, power, all the things I could control and measure. Then a beautiful, clumsy waitress spilled coffee on me and taught me that the heart wants connection, kindness, and love. The heart wants someone who sees past the armor to the person underneath. He turned to Elizabeth, his eyes shining. My heart wants you, Elizabeth Sterling. Yesterday, today, and every day for the rest of our lives. Elizabeth stood and kissed him as everyone cheered. And she knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their forever. Years later, when people asked how they met, Elizabeth would smile and say, I dumped coffee on him, and he fell in love. Jonathan would add, best accident that ever happened to me, and pull her close. Still marveling at his incredible luck, because sometimes the best love stories start with a collision, a mistake, a moment of unexpected connection. And sometimes, the serious, powerful man falls for the sweet, cheerful woman in a way that changes both their lives forever.